free.
And we will die free.
The time in between, though,
that's complicated.
In that time, governments, institutions, and our egos will limit our ability to find true freedom in this life. These are real stories of real people overcoming the odds, persevering in justice, and unlocking their potential. Welcome to Finding Freedom. Here's your host, John Oderman.
Hey, what is happening, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Finding Freedom here on the Lions of Liberty Podcast Network. Great to have you with me on a Friday afternoon as we stream live on YouTube and Rumble and Twitter. And also for those of you listening to the audio recording on Monday when it comes out, great to have you with us. However you listen or watch, we just appreciate your support. Of course, over the past couple of weeks here, we've teased and talked about some changes and some expansion coming to the Lions of Liberty Network, new hosts joining the network, new shows coming onto the network. So in the next couple of weeks, things will really start to become clear, and I think you'll get to see some of these changes, and we're looking forward to unveiling everything and then getting your feedback once everything does roll out. Big things coming, which I think are really going to help the network and all of our shows to reach more people. With that being said, one quick note before I introduce today's guest. And today's topic, very, very poignant in today's political climate, entrepreneurial climate, all of the above. So really excited to introduce my guest. Before I do that, let's talk about coffee. Fox & Sons Coffee. It's my favorite coffee brand. It's what I have in my mug every single morning. Of course, we're in that time of year here in the northeastern United States where you're switching between, if you're a hot coffee guy in the winter or girl, maybe you switch to cold brew when it becomes the spring and summer. So I'm starting to dabble with the cold brew, and I have Stephen Fox at Fox & Sons has recommended some cold brew coffee for me to check out. So I'm looking forward to getting that delivered. Excuse me. You can check out the full line of products that Stephen Fox has at Fox & Sons over at foxandsons.com. And you can get 15% off your order of $40 or more by using promo code John. Check out this promo code John for 15% off an order of 40 or more. All right, let's bring on my guest for today. She is a returning guest. I didn't look up exactly when she was last on the show, but it's been at least a year, I believe. My guest is Magatte Wade. She is an entrepreneur from Senegal and an expert on African trade and free market policies. Of course, with everything going on with the Trump administration's changes to USAID, looking to root out fraud and waste and things of that nature. I think there's a lot of background that Ms. Wade can bring to the table here to educate us on really how USAID has affected Africa and the trade there. And so let's get into it. Magatte, welcome back to Finding Freedom.
Thank you so much for having me, John. It's a delight to be here. I appreciate that.
It's a delight to have you here. And for those of my audience who maybe aren't familiar with you, your work, your books, maybe if you could give them a little bit of a introduction into what it is you do and what you're passionate about.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so my name is Magatte Wade. I am from Senegal, west coast of Africa. I'm also a U.S. citizen by naturalization since 2018. And basically my story is very simple. I was born in Africa. And then right around age 2, my family decided to migrate. My parents decided to migrate away to Europe as economic migrants in search for a better life for me. So they left me behind to be raised by my grandma while they went onto that adventurous journey to try to seek a better life for me. And some 5 years later, as the journey has worked, they called for me to be reunited with them in Germany. And I remember arriving in Germany, looking around and thinking to myself, how come they have this and we don't? And literally, what I was talking about back then was this shower moment where back home, mom says, my grandma would say, because I was in the care of my grandma, my parents were not there. My grandma would say, Magatte, time for your shower. And I knew I had a good 45 minutes to an hour to play some more, because I knew she had to get a stove of coal going, wait, then put a pot of water on it, wait for it to boil. Then we put it into a bigger bucket, mix it to cold water. And then somebody stronger than her would have to drag it to the shower area. And there at last, some 1 hour, some 45 minutes to an hour later, I could finally proceed to take my shower. Here in Germany, mom says, Magatte, time for your shower. I'm like, where's the bucket of water? I'm not getting naked in this cold weather. And she's like, come on, you silly. So I jump in the shower, turn the knobs around. The water's coming down at the temperature that I want. I find that even the pressure you can change. And I'm just like, I just had this moment of just like, wait, what? And it felt like very much like somebody was playing a bad juju trick on me. I'm just like, what person doing this? Where are they hiding? It doesn't make any sense. And, but it was like that about everything, about these grocery stores where they had more breads, types of breads and apples than my little brain could count. I was 7. And the paved roads, all of that. And I was just like, how come they have this and we don't? And eventually, that question really became the defining question of my life. I needed to know. I needed an answer. And it was just, I was just obsessed with it. And eventually the question became, how come some countries like mine and so many in Africa are poor, while countries like the US, Australia, New Zealand, you name it, are rich? And I've heard all types of stories about it as to how that happened, supposedly why that was the case. And anywhere from the IQ theory to the malnutrition part, to the, oh, you just need more education part, to the colonialism, to the you're lazy, to the I've heard it all. But, John, none of those made sense, because let's just take on the colonialism part, which is the reason why many Africans and African allies think that's the reason why we're poor. I say, then how come, Ethiopia, which has never been colonized, for the longest time has been the poster child for poverty in Africa? That doesn't add up. Conversely, you have Botswana that has been colonized, and Botswana has been one of the top performers since the independences. Okay. And same thing with, the laziness, the low IQ. Well, how come the same people you deemed to be low IQ and lazy and all of these, traits of character that you seem to be bad and, even genetically, how come that same person, the minute they make it to a country like the US or places like that, all of a sudden this can self-actualize? So I'm thinking to myself, there's something else going on. And eventually, one thing leading to another, me becoming an entrepreneur in the process. So in the process, we moved away from Germany to France. After business school in France, I moved to the US because for me, it was the land of opportunity. So I came to the US to get my first job because of that. And eventually, but through that process, I eventually also became an entrepreneur. And it's when I became an entrepreneur, I was in a unique position to compare what you would call the business environment in the two countries. So we had a sister company in the US, a sister company in Senegal. And the first time I did that, John, it was mind-boggling, the discrepancy in the ease of doing business between the two places. I've never encountered that. And eventually I thought to myself, I guess it's because we're poor. That's why everything is so cumbersome. And they're rich. That's why everything is so easy. And what I'm talking about was, the permits, the amount of permits that you had to get for any type of business you're trying to run, and the time it would take to get these permits, and the amount of money that would be involved to get these permits. Same thing with labor laws in Senegal. The state has to agree whether you or I can get into a contract and at how much I'm going to have to pay you. Same thing with when I need to get rid of you, John, as an employee. So there's no labor flexibility. The labor laws are stacked up, basically. It is, you have to go through a inspection du travail, so labor inspection office. The officers there get to decide so many things. There is a labor tribunal court. All of this, it's just a mess. And same thing also with the tax code. The tax code is so complicated. It's worth truckloads of laws and regulations. What does it mean in reality? In reality, it means, the thing we have in the US, 3 felonies a day. So when the laws are so complication, yields mistakes. And so I'm basically, and so what it means is I have to hire a CPA, which costs money. And even these experts tell you, listen, Magatte, we're going to make mistakes as well, because this whole thing is too cumbersome. So we're always running the risk of making mistakes, which means I'm always at the risk of being harassed by the government. And worse yet, I'm at the risk on a constant basis of being put in jail for really mistakes that are not because I was being facetious or anything, but the more complicated something is, and the more you run to make mistakes. So it's just like things like that, things that people in this country can't even begin to understand what we're talking about. To open a bank account, it takes forever, because you have to provide so many type of different paperwork, all in the name of know your customer, and it's people cannot open bank accounts because perhaps they don't have a right, they don't have a birth certificate or whatever it is. So you cannot even, I had one of my suppliers who had to send out of the country $50, 50, twice. You know what happened to him? He got a visit from the equivalency of the FBI, wanting to know, where is this money going? Who are these people he's sending it to? What's going on? Every time I have to receive or need to, every time I have to receive $1,000 payment from somebody from outside of Senegal, or I have to send $1,000 outside of Senegal, I have to get authorization from the central bank office for that type of transaction to happen. And the more the amount, the more hoops I have to jump through, and the more justifications I have to put in front of people. I'll give you an example. I'm supposed to be paid for a speaking gig that I'm giving virtually for South Africa in June. The lady who is supposed to be my hostess, and who's organizing this conference, so this is a business for her, she has to pay me in this case because, I'm getting my speaking fee. And basically, it's been more than a month now that she's been going back and forth. So, first she goes in and they say, well, we need to have her address in the US. Okay, so she has to go back. And she couldn't do this online, by the way. So she has to go to the bank, do this, and then get back to me with an email. Then we provided her with that. And then she said, well, they said I also need a proof of the invoice. So Magatte needs to do a specific invoice, send it to me so I can show it to the bank. She goes again to that bank, shows that thing. You would think we're done. No. Yesterday, I got an email from her saying that now they need a copy of my passport. And I'm like, you know what? I'm at the point where I'm almost like, lady, I'm not going to speak for you. Next, they're going to want my health records. What's going on here? You know what I mean? All of this just for her to pay me. So she cannot get the money out of her account to pay one of her speakers. This is insane. Who here has to put up with this crap right now when you're trying to pay your customers back and forth within the US? None of us. So anyway, these are all the nonsense that we see at all levels. Some of them, you're just like, no way, you're joking me. And I'm like, no, sadly, I'm not. And so when I did that, I was like, okay, but I guess it's because we're poor that everything is so bizarre and hard. And here they're rich, it's easy. But the minute you say that, you think to yourself, wait a second. You're poor because you don't have enough money. You don't have enough money because you don't have a job. You don't have it. And what is a source of job for most of us? It's you're poor because you don't have enough money. You don't have money because you don't have an income. What's the source of income for most of us? It's a job, isn't it? Now, where do jobs come from? The private sector, these businesses. Do we believe that businesses exist in a vacuum? Do we believe that the business environment has no consequences on whether or not entrepreneurs are you're gonna have more of them trying, and be more of them winning? Yeah, things don't happen in a vacuum. Well, okay. If the business environment, if an enabling business environment, if a friendly business environment is so key to having more people being able to start and run businesses, yet you just told me that African nations are systematically the worst at providing a sane, viable business environments to their wealth creators, aka entrepreneurs, then voila, John. I had the answer to my long life question of why are some countries poor and some others rich. When in a country you have a high level of economic freedom, it means entrepreneurs are free to enterprise. When they're free to enterprise, it means they can build businesses. Those businesses create jobs. Those jobs provide income to people. And then people all of a sudden now, voila, have, money. There you have anywhere from the middle, class to the higher up. And then life happens. And when you have more people being in a situation like that, your nation is part of the prosperous nations. And voila, that's how it works. You do the opposite, we end up in the opposite. We end up in poverty. So poverty is solved by prosperity. prosperity, not poverty alleviation, which is what this, the Sustainable Development Goals UN people want to make us think, or the USAID people want to make us think. Poverty is solved by prosperity. That's the word. Prosperity is built by entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs need an enabling business environment. You make that happen, we're in business. And so this is what I learned. That's pretty much what I learned. And it's the empirical evidence is so overwhelming. Anytime a nation has tried to run the right software that economic freedom is, free market capitalism is, they thrive. And one people who decided to run two different software see two different outcomes. West Germany, East Germany, South Korea, North Korea, you name it, the same people, same background, same culture, same everything. One goes this way, the other one runs this software, voila. And then you have completely different nations where the people have nothing in common, but they decide to run the same software, and voila, the magic happens again. So this is, in a nutshell, what I've come to discover through my own lived experience, and then had to see if my lived experience was just an anecdote. And that's why I dove deep into economics. I dove deep into all of these, issues, and had to really look at the empirical evidence and look at what all of these schools of thought are saying. And eventually the empirical evidence showed me that what I have been going through and what I have been experiencing is, as a matter of fact, it is as true as it gets. And this is also what got me into the work of, the likes of Hayek. And I'm very much a Hayekian, because what I appreciate about them is they're the ones who had the insight to look to the entrepreneur as the central figure in terms of economics and building everything we build around us. So forever I am in love with that school of thought, and it makes so much sense. So on a nutshell, on a long answer to your question, but I could not answer your question in any other way. That's pretty much who I am and how I came to all of this. I came to all of this because a little girl of 7 years old looked around because she was so stricken by the difference of abundance, literally, between her country of origin, Senegal, and a country where she has just landed into, which was Germany. And I could not help but to wonder why such a striking disparity in terms of abundance or, scarcity, whichever you look at it from.
Well, you did an amazing job answering that question, because I think you answered like 3 questions that I was going to ask you. But this really sets the table for the discussion we're going to have, I think, because, on the one side, we have USAID and how people in the U.S. think that USAID and foreign aid going into African nations is helping, right? They think this is what needs to happen. And then we'll talk about, after that, I want to get into sort of this conflict of investments coming from Russia and China, and what you see there, and then what we see with what you see for the future of Africa. So let's start with USAID and this idea that Americans have, mostly on the left in America, that if we don't have USAID, if we don't have an organization, a bureaucracy like that is funneling funds into Africa, then Africa is never going to innovate. That's what they're saying on the left. That's not what I'm saying. Yeah. So how would you respond to that?
Yeah. So as I respond to that, let me just back up a little bit, because what I have found is not everybody in all the audiences always know what we're talking about. I know USAID or USAID, and you can say it either way, USAID or USAID. I know it's a hot term these days because that's what we hear about, especially from the DOGE efforts. So many people have never heard about USAID, never heard about USAID. And what I notice is many people also don't know really what this is all about, or even how it came to life. So let me just, in case there's somebody out there who has not, gotten this part of the story, let us just make sure everybody is on the same page. So basically what people have to understand is that, the story of places like a continent like Africa goes to, before colonialism. So people think of colonialism when they think of Africa. They also think of slavery. Slavery happened before colonialism. On the slavery part, this is a place where, I think very few people don't understand also that the story of humanity is slavery. People have been enslaving each other for as long as we can imagine. And, in Africa, it was no different. And we had Africans trading other Africans. So that, to me, that's why they call it a trade. It was slavery trade. You can agree that it was as bad as an idea as and I think we all agree on that. But bottom line is, so the history of Africa goes, there is a pre-colonial Africa and then there's a post-colonial Africa. So pre-colonial Africa had slavery in it, and before that there's other things going on. But then came a time when there was colonialism. So this is a time where I think many people in your audience can, perhaps this is where we can wrap their mind around. So many African nations were colonized. Many countries in the global south were colonized by various, Western nations, be it France, be it England, be it, Belgium, be it all of those places. So, but then towards the end of the 1950s, early 60s, you had a wave of liberation that started happening across the continent. And that was what happened in India with Gandhi was a precursor of that. They went first in terms of liberation away from, Great Britain in their case. Mm-hmm. So in any case, in those late 50s, early 60s, we were also, most of our countries were getting their independences. It started with Ghana that got its independence in 57. My country got its independence in April 4th, 1960, and so on and so forth. So all of these African nations were getting their independences for the most part during those times. But those are the times, John, if you remember, late 50s, early 60s, we were at the height of this ideological battle when it comes to West versus East. One defending freedom, running capitalism as its economic system, the other one, the Eastern Bloc, defending various forms of statism, right? And so this was a time at which these two ideologies were at the height of a fight among themselves and looking for influence down south, in the global south, my continent being one of the places. And at that time, put yourself in the shoes of these African liberators who were working on becoming free, no more colonization, we're going to get our independences. So they look around and thinking to themselves, okay, West against East, but West, you happen to be the ones who colonized us. We're fighting you still, and we're about to get our freedom from you guys. So surely, whatever it is that you have, that you are promoting, we are not going to be for you. And you have to also remember, so not only that sentiment that you can truly understand, right? Hey, you colonized us; these guys didn't do anything to us, so. Okay, we're looking their way. And also you have to understand that, the Marxist socialists of the times were actually they were fighting for racial equality in times when it was not the matter. Although Marx was a known racist, the Marxist socialists of those days were the ones who have been notoriously fighting for racial equality. Number two. Number three, you also were, if you can only remember those times, at a time where any respectable intellectual was a Marxist socialist. So, of course, for those three main reasons, we Africans, the liberators of Africa, so these people who would become the presidents of these new free nations, for the most part, all of them had drunken the Marxist socialist Kool-Aid. Almost all of them. Even those of countries who claim, no, we're capitalists. No, you're capitalist, but you're still running a 5-year, centralized planning a la Soviet style. No, you're not. You're not a capitalist. But anyway, this is how most of our nations got started out on their journey to freedom as free nations. Mine was no different. It was a socialist who was running the country. So, but John, I don't have to tell you or anybody in your audience what happens when you embrace socialism, Marxism. I don't have to tell you. What you and I know is you will land on poverty and misery. And this is how some 60 plus years later, after its independences, most African nations are still where they are. And as a group, we are the poorest region in the world. This is what has happened. No one talks about it. No one is challenging this heritage or this background. No one. We just keep on talking about the nonsense that I told you about earlier. Why is Africa poor? Slavery, racism, low IQ, blah, blah, blah. No one says Africa is poor because it is the most overregulated region in the world because of this stupid ideology that is the true colonial ideology that was imported on our shores, because it turns out that Africans before colonialism were actually free marketeers. Very well documented. That's what my book talks about. So in any case, so we ended where we are, the poorest region in the world. So the rest of the world looks at it and thinks, oh, gee, what do we do? How do we help? What do we do? Well, let's give them money. And so what is that? So it's basically a nation saying, rich nation saying, we are going to send money from our taxpayers. So when we collect taxes from our taxpayers, in this case, US taxpayers, we collect money, a part of that, a portion of that goes and we take it and we send it to these poor nations. So then our money through the US government gets to travel to other poor nations' governments. So it's government to government money. That we call foreign aid. And USAID is a big part of that, right? So for people who are listening, this is what happened and that's how we got here. We followed Marxist ideologies that got us nowhere, economically speaking. We are dirt poor, the poorest region in the world. The rest of the world thinks about it and say, okay, how do we help Africa? And then, of course, the people who are always about how do we help Africa, they come also with a certain mentality. And I would argue, it's the same people with the same mentality who in the US, when you're going to say, what are we going to do to support, Black America or African Americans, instead of remembering that we're all created equal in the image of God and we all have the same abilities given the, opportunities, to do good, it doesn't mean that you have an opportunity that you're going to do something good with it. But if you don't have the opportunity, it might be hard for you. So equal access to opportunity should be the battle, not equal outcome. That's ridiculous,
Right.
Yeah. So in this case, these people forget that the most important thing, which is access to opportunity. No, they don't think that way. The way they think is, well, John has 10, Magatte has 0. Let's take 5 from John, give to Magatte. So both John and Magatte have 5. That's nonsense. That's unsustainable. And you and I know why, and the audience know why. We don't have to go into that.
Right.
But instead of thinking, okay, John has 10, Magatte has 0. How can we get Magatte to have more than 0? And we shouldn't be attached to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But it's like, how should we get Magatte to have more than 0? Forget John. He's doing fine. He's great. Whatever he's doing, let us not bother him unless he's stealing from somebody. Then that's a whole nother conversation. But if John is doing his thing and he's over there, he's got 10, forget about John. Leave him alone. Work on Magatte and see with Magatte, okay, Magatte, what are we going to do to help you build to 1, to 2, to 3, to 5, to 10? They never thought that way. The people who say, I'm going to take 5 from John in the form of your taxes and turn around and send it over to Magatte, you're not thinking that Magatte is as equally capable as John is to do what John did for himself. And so this is at the core of it. It is a rotten way of viewing the world and people. It is a bigotry of low expectation. And in a way, in so many ways, you're telling me that us Africans are inferior. Because otherwise, why would you go with that solution rather than look where something like my book looked into and said, oh, these people are where they are because unlike our entrepreneurs who are the wealth creators, their entrepreneurs don't have the same playing field. That's what we need to level. So instead, they try to bring me things and they give me things. And so USAID not only, so you have direct government to government aid, and then USAID does beyond that. They also go and they give money to some NGOs, non-governmental agents, organizations, which I find funny because whatever. So, and then what happens, as you can imagine, is eventually things get corrupt. And some people argue that actually when USAID was being fought off, there was already ideas of, hey, this is going to be, I won't say who I was talking to, but I was talking to one of the AGs of this. And he said at some point, he's like, well, CIA, right? So you see how many people started just to bake into it all types of needs. It became like an influence machine. Because as they say, he who makes the gold makes the rules. So we started using it for all types of things. We started using it for meddling into other people's, governmental affairs. We started and we were able to do and undo, governments and leaders. We then used it also to finance a political and also clientele here in the US, because that money goes to USAID. we send it supposedly, and then USA not only send some money back to Africa supposedly, but also give some of the money to some organizations here in the US. And so this is how you're going to get some, the spouse of vice president or the cousin of this person. And all of a sudden you see that they have a foundation that got hundreds of millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars from the USAID to supposedly run some programs in Africa. It just became, so this is how you compensate and thank people who ran campaigns for you.
Turned into a money laundering scheme.
Revolving door, exactly. It's a revolving door money laundering machine. But it's a machine in which everybody wins, including African leaders who are out there not doing what they should be doing for their countries. That's why we're poor. But hey, they want the money to keep going because when it comes, they buy chateaus in the south of France, Swiss bank accounts, marry 4 women, have 20 million girlfriends and 20 million kids when we can even name them. I mean, it's all over the place. But in a scheme, in a Ponzi scheme like this, everybody is winning and eating and becoming fat cats. The only person who is not benefiting is the ordinary African. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, not only they're not getting anything, not only they're not getting anywhere, but on top of that, you also instilling in our young people a sense of dependency. That the only thing we can hope for is a world in which we take the crumb from others. Dependency. Do you really think that dependent minds can build companies? So the very mindset that's needed for our wealth creators is also being corrupted. So, and so think about it, John. So this whole aid thing, the reason why someone like me, I'm not happy about it is because everything I told you about, it is counterproductive, doesn't do the work it's supposed to do. But for me, the biggest issue I have with this foreign aid, and I will never forgive foreign aid. I don't care what were the good intentions behind it. We all know that the path to hell is paved with good intentions. We all know that. So I am not about to forgive foreign aid and any of these initiatives, because not only didn't they do what they were, didn't they change much, but on top of that, they created a culture of dependency. But the biggest for me is, while all of this nonsense was going on, it kept on delaying much needed work and deep reforms that needed to take place. Mm-hmm. Because foreign aid and initiatives like USAID covered for the longest time the issue that you and I talked about from the beginning, which is this continent has some of the worst business environments in the world, and that's what we need to tackle. People need to have access to good governance. We're talking property, we're talking about rule of law, property rights, and all of those things. You put that in place, get out of the way, let people work. They masked that problem for as long as they existed. Because why? What they were running is in contradiction with what I just said. Because if we do what I just said, if we put property rights, rule of law, and all of that in place, then the people will thrive. But when the people thrive, that whole economy collapses. Poverty Inc. shows that very well. If you want to see it, it's povertyinc.org. You get all the information there. That's what we show. So we have been in the wilderness screaming out loud for as long as people can remember that this aid is toxic, this aid is counterproductive, and this aid is delaying us, taking away precious time from us to address the real problems. And sure enough, here we are. Now,
is that a widely held belief amongst African citizens and African nations that the aid is actually doing damage?
Yeah. The funny thing with Africans, so you have two kinds of Africans. You have two types. As with everything, right? You have the ordinary everyday Africans. They know it. I mean, you want to go to some of my most viral posts, even with even from Africans who don't like my pro-market values and views. The minute I talk about the toxicity of aid, they all rally around. Everybody's like, yeah, because everybody has their own story of corruption and how your money is actually not going where it's supposed to go. Mm-hmm. We all know. Everybody knows. We all know. Now, the ones who don't want to talk about it or don't want to go there are the ones who benefit from it. There are many Africans who are hired in this system, many Africans who have amazing skill sets. But instead of putting the skill set on the private sector market and in getting our countries from where they are to a better position and helping build innovation at home, what it is this money, this easy money, corrupts them into joining this aid industry where They make insane amount of money that no free market situation could justify, because hey, it's money that's not accountable to nobody and to nothing. And whether you do what you're supposed to do or not, it keeps pouring in. And so even in that process, they're taking our most capable people and wasting their skill set in worthless initiatives. So it's hard for a lot of these Africans to wake up to that, to be like, well, I guess that's right. Some of them say it, some of them tell you flat out, I know, but hey, that's where the money is, so that's where I'm going to go. So this is what you have. Now, all of that being said, I will not deny that there's probably a good 10%, I don't have the exact number, of the USAID initiative that are maintaining people alive. I will not deny that. This is why if I had to do it, I do believe we needed to rip this Band-Aid. It needed to be done, and there's no other way you could have done it, because we've been expecting these people to do the right thing. But how can you ask an industry to wipe itself out of existence? Because this is an industry. So the only way it can work is if we can just make it happen. And so from that standpoint, I'm very much on board with these cuts. But if it was me, the way I would have done it is cut all the things that we know there is no life hanging on it. For all we know, there's no life hanging on all these stupid programs, all of these things, whether it's about doing some PR work and who knows what else, all of these things where we know there's no life hanging on it. Cut it, be done with it.
There's no when you say no life, there's no fruit, there's no prosperity that's going to be.
Well, what I mean that no life hanging on it means that you don't have a child in a hospital right now being sustained alive simply thanks to our money that's supporting that hospital. Or
good clarification.
I'm glad you helped me do that. Or somebody that we know is on HIV drugs that is provided by this aid, right? And we know if you stop it, then bad things happen. So, but those are not the norm. Those are not the majority. It's just like a part. So, but anything else where we know there's no direct link between we cut this and the life is in serious danger, get it out of the way. And it's probably a good 90%. But that 10% where we're like, okay, directly we can see a link, or we think there is a 2 or 3 degree link. Let's not touch those guys. Doesn't mean we're going to keep it. Doesn't mean we're going to keep it like that forever. We're just not going to touch it, because we need to figure it out first, because we want to make sure that we leave no lives behind. We don't get anybody to die. But we're going to come back to you. We're going to come back to you. We're going to look into this, and we're going to see how we can put a sunset clause into what's going on. We're going to see how we go from where we are today, people needing this HIV on their bed, to 5 years from now, we have to be out of here. We have to be out of here. And so you kind of prepare that, because we're going to be out. So that's the only tweak I would have done to all of this. And I think because we didn't do that little tweak, then it's giving all the haters and the opponents something very juicy to speak about. They are rightly pointing to this 10% of the situation where we are maintaining people alive through this aid. But, so that's why when I see, what's his name, the guy who writes on the New York Times, and he always focuses on health things, Nicholas, what's his name again? I'm sure, Christoph. Okay. Yeah, Christoph. So he'll go and handpick those situations, but I'm like, yes, they exist, but it is a minority of the situations. So anyway, I just feel like this is how we probably could have done it better, and kind of just shush all of those voices, because it is the right thing to do. I mean, where I draw the line is, we don't lose lives if we can avoid it. And I think we could have, So that's how I would have done it differently. But other than that, I am on board. And I think that anybody who really truly cares about Africans, anybody, I don't care which side of the aisle you are, if you truly care about Africans, you're going to have to show me that you truly care about Africans. And I'm here to say that the only way to care about Africans is to support, is to support in productive ways, meaning that we have to focus on this business environment, because we Africans, and we Africans, Americans, no one should rely on an Africa that's going to need to always rely on others to stay up. We can't do that. And so this is what I challenge people to think about. And that's to me why, in a way, I'm excited that this is ending. I believe that there are ways to propose viable alternatives, and hopefully we can talk about that in a minute. But that's my position on USAID. It is painful. I get it. It is painful. But this is the right thing to do. And I am sick and tired of people who are in this industry who like to think of themselves as the saviors of Africa. You're the saviors of nothing. You're in it, filling up your own pockets, okay? And feeling like mightier than others just because supposedly you're doing it from a nonprofit standpoint, right? And looking down on those of us who are entrepreneurs, who are in the business sector, and you think you good because you are NGO, you're in the nonprofit sector, and us greedy, dirty, business people. But without what we create, nothing happens over there, and what you're doing is not the solution. So I think recalibration needs to happen, and I think it's about time that we all look at the problem for what it is. The problem is over-regulation, and if we want to be serious about Africans no longer being poor but prosperous, we're going to have to be serious about how do we tackle these business environments in Africa. That, to me, is the root cause of all of this. We fix it, then people can lift themselves up, and that's what all of us, any of us, should be talking about. On the side, does it mean that there's not always a need, but a little need for helping people who are down on their luck? Absolutely, and that's really what aid should be about. Just that, humanitarian aid. That's it. But this aid that becomes chronic, that's just not right.
100% agree with you. So we are a little bit over our time. Did you have some more time to talk here?
Sure.
Okay. Well, so we'll keep going for a little bit longer. Yeah, I do want to get to really the prescription to fix it, how you see that in the future of Africa. But first, China, Russia, they are both trying to get influence within Africa. So can you talk about what you've seen and how they have expanded, and maybe some different practices that they're using as opposed to the U.S. investment mechanisms?
Yeah, I think the best way to think about it, if you were to position yourself in Africa, from where I'm sitting and what I'm seeing is basically, you have a way the West traditionally has been the relationship that the West has had with Africa. And within the West, I would put, they more or less do the same thing, but with a little bit of a difference here. And there, the line I would draw is between the West. On one side, you have Europe and old Europe, and then you have the USA for the most part, and Canada on the other side. But for the most part, even though I created these two blocks in the Western hemisphere, you can see that they do have something in common in the way they approach Africa, their relationship to Africa. And for the most part, it is a foreign aid type of relationship. Africa poor, we are rich, government to government aid, okay? And then all the things we just talked about, you and I here. In addition to that, then there are multinationals, especially on Europe side, especially France. What they do is they carve out really interesting, juicy deals for themselves. So they have right of first refusal with in many of these countries for their big multinationals, whether it's oil companies, big consumer packaged goods companies, whatever. That's they manage for their multinationals to have really advantageous deals and first picks. Even in the case of France, our currency is pegged to the euro through France, and our currency is actually made in France and comes down to us, and we give France a large percentage of reserve. We keep a large percentage of our money in France to serve as reserves guarantees, to help, with to basically back up this them being the guarantors in a way of our currency. Our currency outside of my country is worth nothing. So this is an relation you have there with most of the most of the Westerners. But within that, I explained what France especially plays a special role there. But so the French, what they do is say, okay, in exchange for all of that, including your natural resources, dear President, I'm here to help you protect the integrity of your physical geography. So I'm here to help you protect the borders of your country so that you don't get invaded and or attacked by terrorists, who knows what, or whatever. We're here to protect the integrity of the land. So that means, by the way, we need to put in some military, bases, blah, 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 because that's how we're going to do it. So then that's what the deal is. Dear President, this is what we're going to do. We're going to protect your borders and the integrity of your land. But in exchange, you give to our multinationals, you give us your natural resource, all of those things. That's the deal. In a deal like that, the traditional natural ordinary Africans is not necessarily seeing themselves, becoming any more prosperous. This is not building prosperity for them. Then the Russians, their deal is mostly, dear leader, I am here to protect you against your own people. I'm here to protect you against your military, against your police, against people like that who could depose you, and against even any ordinary citizen who might have the idea of toppling you down, because everybody's fed up with you. But we're here to protect you. And then usually the way it works is they bring in the militias. Wagner is a very known one, and that's what they do it. They're here. They're here for the leader, and to make sure the leaders can stay in place and nobody's going to topple him or her. And then the way they pay themselves is with our natural resources and stuff like that. Okay.
So it's very directly exploitative. Really.
Very. Chinese say, for the Chinese, them, it's like, okay, dear leader, we're going to protect you in general from, the bad circumstances you're creating by just being here to basically help you finance the very infrastructure that we know you need badly, but you're not being able to produce, to build because you have no money. And the West told you that they're not going to give you any money anymore for your infrastructure, or when they do it, they're really on your back. They're trying to make sure you're not stealing any of this money. We know you thugs. We know you're going to steal most of it, and we don't care. What we care about is when it comes, we're not going to judge you. Not a problem. We don't care about your thug. We can work with you openly, unlike the Western nations, because when the Western nations have to answer to their populace, if the Western nations are doing business with a known dictator or whatever openly, then guess what? You get all of these protests back home. You get all types of campaigns against you. I mean, it can go pretty far. But the Chinese, hey, who is going to go against Xi Jinping and be like protesting in China because, you're working with such and such president that's put so many people in jail, no right of, no free press, no blah, blah, blah. Why are you working with them? We don't want you to work with them. China shouldn't have nothing to do with it. Yeah, right. Who's going to do that in China? You tell me. So because of that, the CCP, and I think it's important to say the CCP, just like when I talk about Russia, to not say Russians, to not say the Chinese. When you hear me say the Chinese, it's really the CCP that I mean. When I say the Russian, really the Russian government that I mean. And in general, France, all of that, same thing. Because as we know, people are different from the governments.
Absolutely. Good to clarify.
Oftentimes our governments don't represent us. So here the CCP, doesn't care. The CCP doesn't care. The CCP has the type of freedom that that nations who are supposedly operating under good, supposed to show good consciousness or whatever, can't do. So then they can work pretty much with anybody. It doesn't matter if you've killed all of your people. It doesn't matter. Do you have something that I want? Yeah. Do I have something you want? Let's do it. So the Chinese comes and says, the roads you were supposed to build, the hospitals you were supposed to build, all of these things you were supposed to build, infrastructure, but you cannot build because it costs money. And the Westerners are saying that if they loan you the money, it comes with strings attached. And most importantly, you're not going to be able to steal as much of it as you want. And we know you will. So us, no strings attached, no questions attached. But here's the deal. I make it very simple. You need $1 million to build a road from point A to point B. Nobody's going to give it to you, but fine, we'll give it to you. We'll give you that $1 million. It's going to come. It's a loan. You're going to have to repay it to us. If you can't pay it back, we're going to take your airport. We're going to take one of your organs, port, airports, whatever. But also, you got to give us the deal. So we are going to be the people who get the deal to make that road. So think about it. $1 million to build a road. Okay. We give you that $1 million. You're going to have to repay to me with interest. And so you're going to get the interest back, right? And you give us that contract. So plus 1 million, because it's supposed to cost $1 million, right? right? And by the way, they don't care. They don't care if in that million the leader stole $500,000, whatever. It costs supposedly $1 million. You asked me for $1 million, I gave you $1 million. The million's here, but I get the contract, so they get that money. They get that money supposedly, and then also, if we can't repay, which most of the time we can't, they're going to take our airport something much more valuable than what the loan was worth. And by the way, when they get to make the road, do you think they're going to hire people in Africa and create at least a few jobs for the time it lasts? No.
They bring in their own people.
They bring Chinese people, in this case from China. And I wouldn't be surprised if most of them were prisoners and or slaves that the Uyghurs are. We don't know. Even the rice that they eat is imported in. The USB keys that they use is imported in. So literally none of that $1 million contract that they got from us stays in the country. So these are the deals we get with them, and they're fine, and it is how it is. And then also they get a lot of our most promising young Africans, especially the brighter ones. They get them to go to China on free scholarships to basically, and you know what happens there. And so you have very pro-Chinese people. They're building many Confucius schools across the continent. They're doing all of these things. But at least in all of these deals, the Chinese are the ones that are doing something where the ordinary African, while still not being more wealthy, they're still not getting wealthy from these deals, right? But at least they're saying, hey, I get better roads to drive on to go from point A to point B. When I need to go to the hospital, oh, by the way, that hospital they built, we didn't have that before. And I get to go there faster than before than before. So at least they're seeing like tangible, things.
They're seeing a return on their investment.
Exactly. And on top of that, there is this whole issue of the West and its patronizing ways, because we all know that USAID money, by the way, and foreign aid money comes with people also telling us what to do. They have been using it also to promote very woke ideologies on the continent. And our continent is very conservative for the most part. Doesn't matter which religion you are. We are very traditionalist and quite conservative for the most part. And so you could imagine why a lot of this woke, agenda doesn't bode well with Africans. I don't care what you think of it. It's just not where many Africans are and are not interested in that. And so they can see and feel like we're being told what to do, what to think, and who to be, through this money that you're sending to us. Well, we don't sense any of that from the Chinese involvement with us. So the fact that when they come to a leader, they're not patronizing that leader into, you're going to have to adopt this agenda, social agenda or cultural agenda. And also, we don't want to do business with you because you're a thug or whatever. There's none of that stuff. So I think for young Africans, it bodes very well. So it makes them feel like the only true partners that the continent has is China. And this is not good for the US. So what you have right now is many young Africans who are just like, and also thinking that they could have a development a la Chinese, meaning like Africans have, many of them have this tendency to really believe in strong men. And the reason why it is I don't think it's because we're dictatorial people or whatever. It's just because when we see all the chaos that surrounds us, our natural instinct, and I think it would be the natural instinct of many people who don't understand how things work, to just say, well, we need a strong man or a strong woman to put us all into gear. You know what I mean? So because of the ambient chaos that comes from all of this poverty that we have and all the disorder, they think law and order, and they think the only way to do that is a strong man that's just going to come and whip everybody into shape, pretty much. And so they're looking at China like, yeah, China has such a man, and look, they're thriving. So that's also not understanding, because it's from the same people who don't understand emergent order and also don't understand economics, that China might be, Xi Jinping might be communist in all the ways possible, shape or form, but the success of China, the success that they're so excited about, them young Africans, these buildings, the fact that China is now second, power in the world, economic power, all of these things that they love so much and they would love to have for themselves, it's not because of communism. It's not because of a strong man. It's because of even that communist country had to set up SEZs, special economic zones, that are among the most free market zones in the world. They too had to bow to embrace capitalism to be where they are. Our people don't see that, don't understand that. So they're just thinking, see, strong men can bring this type of wealth. So only a strong man actually can do this. And so they don't believe that we could have the level of freedom that in America we have, because they're thinking, already given all the crazy chaos that's here, if we all have all the freedom in the world, I mean, it's going to be the end of the world over here. So they're thinking, no, we need a strong man to put us into gear. And we know that it's possible for strong men to also build wealth. Look to China. So for them, the model is not the US, the model is China. And that's important, because by 2050, 1/4 of the world's population will be African. And by 2100, it's going to be half of the world's population that's going to be African. Now, if you're going to have all of these people who believe that the way to be is the CCP way or the Russian way, you've got a problem. And by the way, the Russians, when they come into Africa, they're not just happy causing just little trouble. What they go for is they go for a coup. Let's help organize a coup. And then once we have help organize a coup, we work with the leader to kick out all the Western firms out of this place. That's what happened in Niger, Mali, and so on and forth. And so that's them. They have a specific signature of how they do things. And this is how they kick out the Western world outside of Africa. So my thing for America is, so just one more thing on all of that. So you asked me how all of these different regions work with Africa. So then you have the rest of the global South that, they're as poor as we are. If not, they're not much better than us. So it's not really like we connect with each other. We're poor, poor people to poor people, whether it's like, some Central American nations or Latin American nations or other global South nations, everybody's just struggling, trying to make it up as they're going, right? And so we don't have really those type of ties with the rest of the global South among ourselves. Of course, we have solidarity in how we feel about all of this, but other than that, all of us are busy trying to, put some food on the table. So those are the relationships we have with the powerful nations or the meaningful nations. And so there, as you can imagine, whether it's with the Russians, the Chinese, the French, the Americans, the North Americans, whatever they've been doing with the continent clearly has not gotten us to prosperity. Clearly, we have not built prosperity from it. Clearly. You can say, yeah, the roads. You can say, yeah, the hospitals. You can say, yeah, at least you don't have terrorists attack you. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. But we're still poor. We're still the poorest region in the world. And I argue, of course, we're going to remain the poorest continent in the world, because the only way to build prosperity is to let entrepreneurs work, give entrepreneurs the freedom to work. But you, Africa, insist on not looking at that. You insist on not fixing your business environments. Until you do, nothing is going to happen. Nothing. This prosperity that you want, not going to happen. I don't care. So this is why I argue that all of his involvement from the rest of the world with Africa has not led Africa to prosperity. Because if anybody tells me that Africa is prosperous right now, then I'm like, we've got a problem. So this is where I think there's a unique role for the US to play, for Africa to leapfrog from poverty to prosperity. So one of the things, and I've staked the change on the creation of these special economic zones. We call them startup cities. I'm sure you heard of one in Prosper Honduras. Basically, these are next generation special economic zones that have their own law and governance. Insofar, law and governance is the key critical problem, then that's what we need to fix. And when I say law and governance, the other problem is in the world of these charter cities, free cities, startup cities, name it, there's different names. People tend to think it's just one big block. It's not. So allow me to explain to your audience the little things that I want them to see. In the world of all of the startup cities, free cities, charter cities, what you have is you have a spectrum. As you can imagine, there's a spectrum and everything. On this end over here, you have those people who are more on the charter city side, who are just like, hey, let us at least gain increments from the current status quo. And increments are always good. But it is certainly not what's going to flip it to where it needs to be. Okay. But it is an honorable and a viable route to go. And so that's where you see more the charter cities folks. And there's a reason why they're the ones who are more embraced by academia and all of that, is because also it's not rocking the boat to point where people are like, wait, what's going on here? So, but it's great because at least they're socializing this idea to places that are influential and matter. So they're doing a great job there. And I'm a proud supporter of what Charter Cities does. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have those people who are trying to go for like full autonomy, almost like a country inside of a country. For many reasons, I don't like that. as an African who wants to see these in my own continent, I am not interested in a zone that's going to want to be like, I'm a proud Senegalese, just like I'm a proud American as well. America has its own values. Would America want, like to have a little country inside of it, even if it happens to be from one of the best, whatever backgrounds? No, we all have our pride in who we are, for good or for bad. And so I think if we need to be clear that the business environments and the business environment only is what needs to change, right? And so what it means is we're not thinking about family law, changing family law, immigration law,
Right.
defense law, all of that remains the privy of a sovereign nation. That's what makes this nation. And so on the other end, where you have people who they will take as much autonomy as they can at all levels. And I'm not necessarily for that. But this is a place where you have, but hey, some people think it's a good idea. Some people want to do it. You go do it. But that's just not my positioning or my MO.
Right.
Where I am is this nice middle that I think is really great. You have enough autonomy that you can really flip things around, really in a meaningful way, while still being part of this nation and being a full, member of this nation that you're in. And what it means is all we touch is the commercial and the business laws. But when it comes to the commercial and the business laws, you work with a country. This leader says, in this country, I vetted with all the powers that I have. If it's the parliament that has to pass the act in parliament, if it's the constitution that has to be amended, if we have to go for a referendum, whatever it is, as a nation, we have used the tools that we need to use in order that on this piece of land, we get to repeal all existing commercial and business laws and regulations. So you start over with a clean slate. Don't waste your time reforming. Don't waste your time refurbishing. Don't waste your time restoring. Don't waste your time, nothing. Take it all down, clean it all up, and start over. But when you do that, please, the deal with us is going to be, you are going to make this zone. If it was measured against the rest of the world, it has to be one of the top 10 business environments in the world. We want that when Ernst & Young or Deloitte or those guys are going to go and do the measurements, that they come back and say, in this zone, we are up there with Denmark, Singapore, Hong Kong, places like that in terms of business environment. Because we know what happens when you have it. When you have that, prosperity ensues. It's everywhere. It's tried. It works. So that's pretty much what I'm working on in Africa, and I'm very happy to report that we're making really amazing progress. And this is a place where I could see the U.S., putting its support behind it in multiple ways, maybe providing political risk insurance to these type of zones, around the world, especially in Africa, because then you're giving them extra, validity and solidity so that they can really build the way they're supposed to build. And, and I think that would be sending a very strong signal to the people on the ground, because as these zones progress and thrive, all of these jobs that are created, and in these zones, 90% of the jobs that we create normally go to the locals. So you can see these are the type of situations where local people ordinary Africans will see themselves like, wow. Yeah, the road we talk about, they're right here. The hospital we talk about, they're right here. All of these things right here. And on top of that, I've got a great job, with a great income that allows me to go to the doctor when I need to. I don't need to wait for USAID to provide for my medication or anything like that. Now we're in business. Now you have truly sovereign people. Truly. No one has done that with Africa yet. No one. Some of the people who come and create some jobs, you go to these places. Who is the top? The top is all of these foreigners, and then all the most degrading jobs, the most bad paying jobs. And don't take me wrong, a job is always better than nothing, right? Don't take me wrong. But you know what I mean by that. Yes. So, but here it's like, wow. And it's built into the incentives that we, the locals, even if we don't start as managers, we will become managers because it's built into the incentives. These companies have the incentives to train us to the next level, which is going to come with bigger income, with bigger, skill sets that I can monetize for the more money. I mean, no one has done that. No one has done that with Africa yet. No one. And this is all the Africans want. And it's just, so we propose, let us work together. and let the US be also the partner in this.
Mhm.
And it is so natural for the US to be a partner in something like this, because the free market is almost like the signature of America, of Americans, and believing that, you can start here and end up over here.
Yeah, it would have to be a partnership that would come from the political right in the U.S., because the political left will never go for it.
I mean, we've seen how some of them have really tried to diminish these activities. And first of all, this is why I've been having a problem with so many, because I'm just like, look, if you truly care about Africans, you're going to have to care about us becoming prosperous, not just a little bit less poor, but prosperous, where we become dignified people. If you really believe in us and if you really care about us, you're going to have to go there with us. But how can you tell me you support us, yet you are as anti-free market and as anti-capitalist and as anti-business as it comes? You are my problem. So quit saying you care about me, because you don't care. You don't care. For as long as it was possible, as long as you could use my situation to push against capitalism and say, oh, you see what capitalism does? No, that's not what capitalism does. And now people know better. But in any case, my point is, people don't understand that we will take the support from wherever it comes from. That's why when I hear people say, oh, how come you talk to so-and-so? I'm like, I will talk to anybody who is willing and ready to help me with this agenda. That's it. That's it. Sometimes some of the most weird bedfellows, find each other, because you know what? When you have a goal in common, you line forces, and that's exactly what I'm doing. Free markets is the way. Free markets is the way, and anybody who wants to work with me on that, you will be my friend. And anybody who doesn't, the history will take care of you and remember you. And the bottom line is,
sometimes you get some strange coalitions.
Yes.
But that's, hey, if it advances the goal and gets you close to where you're going, then there's nothing wrong with that.
That's all I care about. We have to be pragmatic. And at the end of the day, to me, your intentions and what you claim is nothing compared to what you really do. I have far more respect and appreciation for somebody who might not be saying all the right things, but is aligning with me on the free markets and therefore helping me get from poverty to prosperity, than I will ever have for somebody who says, oh, I love you and I care about you and I don't think racism is right and I don't think this and I don't think that, yet, but sorry, free markets, no. Oh, capitalism, no. And I'm going to fight you. No capitalism for you, no free markets for you, no nothing like that for you. Aid, yeah, but anything else, forget it. So really, as an African, who is better for my future? Who? Okay? And I think that's what people need to really understand. No, there's going to be no more free lunch. No more free lunch thanks to virtue signaling. No more.
Yeah, 100%. This has been, I'm so thankful you came on this show, because this has been like an educational episode, giving history on politics and cultural issues, history of Africa, the influence from Europe and the United States and China and Russia. But then also, we've wrapped it up at the end here. What's the prescription going forward? So last question, 5 to 10 years from now, do you see some of these, you didn't call it opportunity zones, I forget what the term you used, but some of these zones, do you see them coming to fruition in Africa, free market zones?
Oh yes. So yeah, yes, we yes. So the best way for some of your listeners to relate to these are what you hear the current administration called opportunity zones. Some of them call it freedom zones, and I think they're coming up with a new name of calling it acceleration zone, something like that. So that's exactly the way to think about these. And when you say the 5 to next 10 years, I believe that we are about to finalize the contracts for such first zones in Africa, because that's where we're at. From there, it's going to take, so the way we're going about it is we're first going to go for the creation of an international financial center, because for that, you just need a brownfield in which, you get the building or whatever, and then you can get going. And then while you're doing that, though, you have a greenfield somewhere where that one is going to take at least 3 to 5 years, for you to start having built at least phase one of the master plan. And then, from there, it just keeps on, you just keep on adding elements. You first start with your big master plan, like basically at scale, this is what it looks like, right? You're going to have these eight lane highways here, 4 ways over there. So everything is there. This building is going to be here, this many height, whatever, and it's going to be in compliance with all the regulatory, all the environmental, regulations, whatever. You make sure that everything is fine, you're good nation and whatever. And then you're going to start building. So you have these 2 phases. So phase 1, I believe that within the next 5 years, from here doing this, from us signing this, next 3 to 5 years, you're going to see already, just in terms of the volume of money that travels in and out of this international financial center, because Africa has a few international financial center, but nothing that's really truly world class. And we propose to build the first one like that, right? And so there's going to be a lot of money that's going to be flowing through that for that place. So from that standpoint alone, you're going to start to see this one hub in Africa, where it's going to be nothing short of what you can see Dubai.
It'll become like Dubai.
Well, with only one building to start with, knowing that the real Dubai is going to happen, in the greenfield.
Yeah.
So that's the first 3 to 5. Where you're going to hear all of these major finance companies, crypto companies, all of them operating out of there, almost.
Yeah.
And then as we develop the greenfield, so that one, so basically what you asked me is 5 to 10 years. So you're going to start seeing things, but it's within the next 12 years that you're going to be like looking around and be like, wait, what? And it's going to be a place that I think is going to be even more impressive than Singapore, even more impressive than Dubai. And I know that people listening to this are like, she's smoking something. No, I'm not. I just know the power of visa. I just know the power of what freedom does. If you have a zone where it is now permissionless, rather than in the US, where everything has become, you have to first ask for permission before you do anything. We know what happens to places where everything has to happen through a permission. But we also know what happens the more permissionless places you build. And permissionless doesn't mean no laws, doesn't mean no rules. This is where people make mistakes, right? But what it means is such clear rules, such sensible rules, such smart rules, that you allow people to truly, truly have a freedom to innovate within this prepared environment. But it's prepared in such a way that you're not stifling people's and clipping people's wings. And so the reason why I say what I say with a straight face, that within the next 12 years or so, and then 20, 25 years from now, bingo, it's just like whatever. It's just like, wow, Magatte said it. Magatte did tell us. Well, yeah, the reason why with a straight face, I can tell you that if we are able to sign these deals, it's going to be, you're going to see places that you've never imagined before. We're going to help leapfrog in ways you've never imagined before. Where in the US, you have all of these issues around even using nuclear power, SMRs, because most of the time it's the technology is getting there. We have technology.
That's my background, SMR.
Oh wow. So we have technologies that are ready to deploy and things like that. But what stands in the way? The regulatory frameworks, right? And so here we do have these places where you're going to be able to kind of be able to deploy in a safe manner, be able to learn, repeat, redo, all of that, because that's the process of innovation. That's how it works. But when you're in a country where you're scared of your own shadow, you can't go from point A to point B. And so these are the places we're building. And I argue also that we're going to be attracting a lot of top cutting edge innovators who fed up because they're based in Europe, they're based in the US, they're based in Canada, where they have to wait for all types of permissions to do anything. They'll say, hey, let us go to this place where the environment is curated in such a way we can do all of this innovation without, harming the environment, without harming, human rights, without any of that stuff. Because as you and I know, Matt, you don't have to be destroying the earth or anything like that to be able to get to the next level. That's what technology is about. That's what we know today, not to build with lead pipes or anything like that. So who is the idiot who's going to go back and build with lead pipes supposedly because it's cheaper or whatever? And I'm not even sure it's cheaper. But you see what I'm saying? This is like true innovators who are using everything that we know to build better, anything that they do, whether it's medication that we come up with, medicines, whether it's bridges, how we build bridges, whether it's energy, our energy sources, the energy mixes, how they work with one another, all of that stuff. For Christ's sake, I would love to see Africa have the first fusion reactors in the world. Why? Because we were the ones who were like, let's do it. Let's do it with all the protections around it. It's just, this is what happens when you have a permissionless environment. And again, permissionless not meaning no rules and lawless place.
Yeah.
People need to learn what these terms mean. But it has been the bedrock of entrepreneurship. It has been the bedrock of innovation. Everything that we have today, we owe it to innovators. And innovators cannot innovate if you put all of these barriers in their tracks because, we don't want to fall onto something that didn't work out. The Wright brothers, people need to read the stories of the Wright brothers. How many times did these people fail? How many times? I'm surprised they didn't die even in the process.
It is crazy. Yeah.
That's what it takes. But the only thing is you try to do it with the utmost consideration in mind, like them. They tried all of these things, but they managed to make sure that they didn't kill themselves in the process. But what did they get in the end? In the end, we get the airplane that you and I and everybody is still benefiting from today. Yeah. This is what we're talking about. But if they had to each time go and ask the government, can I do this? Answer would be no, you can't. Why? Because it's too risky. Because this could happen. Because that could happen. So no. Then they go home. And today we're probably still using the buggies on who knows what else.
Yeah.
So this is what we need to remember. This is what we need to understand. I think people need to go back and learn about, human progress. Human progress. I mean, we have come from so far and we can go so much further, but the principles that allowed us to do that remain, and so we have to bring them back. We have wasted precious time with this nonsense of the past few decades of adding layers after layers after layers of regulation over regulation in this country. America should be unrecognizable today if we had not proceeded to put layer upon layer of regulation.
100%.
Yeah. Just like China went the other way around.
And I think people in America are starting to realize that, looking at, these pictures from China and their advanced cities, and looking at, we have cities like Detroit that are literally falling apart here in the United States.
Yeah.
I absolutely love the passion you're bringing to the table, the vision. It's exciting to me just hearing you talk about it. And I do want to continue to have you back on, Magatte, to talk about this in the coming years as it unfolds. I definitely want to follow this story because I'm excited about it. We are out of time for today, though. But before I let you go, could you please just tell my audience where they can follow you, where they can read your work, where they can find your book, where they can follow this project, if anything else you have?
Yeah. So this is my book, The Heart of a Cheetah. So you can find it on Amazon and everywhere you can find books. But really, the easiest thing is to go to my website to just be able to reference back to anything I say, and that's going to take you to my social media and everything. My website is called Magatte Wade. So Magatte, MAGATTE Wade, WADE.com. That's the easiest. And if not, they can always, I give them permission to reach out to you, John, if it's okay to ask for where to find me.
All righty. Well, thank you, Magatte, for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it even more. Thank you.
All right, everybody. That is a wrap for today's show. I know that you enjoyed it. I know you learned a lot, and hopefully you've discovered some passion for what can happen, the opportunity in Africa. It's really an exciting, I don't want to call it a project. It's really bigger than a project. It's exciting to look at the prosperity that is to come on the African continent. So we'll continue to follow that. Like I said, I do want to continue to have Magatte on down the road as this begins to unfold. So that is the show for today. I want to remind you, you of course can join us on Patreon or on Locals to support us, get our bonus content, all that good stuff. So please check that out. Of course, subscribe wherever you're listening or watching this, be it on Apple Podcasts or over on YouTube or Rumble. Hit that subscribe button, get your notifications. With that being said, I'll see you all next week. In the meantime, always remember to keep your head up and the fires of liberty burning.